Good morning. So there is a post that's making the rounds. I've seen at least three versions of it this week called something like The Seven Lies That Created an Epidemic. And some of what it says is real science, but a lot of what it is like an overcorrection and a simplification. And it really is very dangerous and it can get people hurt. And it's part of the same misinformation ecosystem that is driving this protein obsession. I am watching it cause real clinical harm in people, including physicians. So today we're going to untangle all of it, and I'm going to show you how what actually does work. So I'm Dr. Jen. I help women and children reverse metabolic disease using the joyful medicine method, which is evidence-based lifestyle medicine that honors your culture, your life, and your lived experience. Weight inclusive, joy first, always. So welcome. Thank you for joining me today, and feel free to post and comment. I come back and look at all the comments if you have any questions, and let me know where you're from if you are here. And so I just want to start out saying I am definitely not defending the food industry. We all know that there's a lot of problem with what goes on in the food industry, but I want to help you from a little overcorrection. So let's break down this post that I've seen again and again and again. And some versions of it, pieces of it, they keep popping up everywhere. And so I really want to go through each of these claims so that we can really, you know, figure out what makes sense. Okay. So one is fat makes you fat, and the statement is that dietary fat was unfairly demonized and that in the low fat era. And so, yeah, okay, it's fat is not just the single macro. I never will talk about a single macro as a problem. And yes, there did with that came a lot of pushing of processed substitutes that are really can be harmful when consumed in abundance, which I think that is the biggest problem, right? Is when you focus on consuming just one type of food a lot. The baseline should always be whole unprocessed foods as the baseline of what you consume, whole unprocessed, mostly plant foods. And that really should be where we're all headed. So yes, fat is not the only problem. But the problem is it's not unlimited fat that you can consume. Whole food fat, avocado, nuts, and seeds is not the same as saturated fat from animals, number one. Not that you should consume only nuts and seeds and avocado. A small amount of those things are great, and they actually can help support healthy weight. They can help support lower cholesterol. They can support heart health and brain health and all of those things. But the quality and whole food context matter. So again, when you're consuming saturated fat, when you're consuming foods with saturated fat, particularly animal foods with saturated fat, that can be harmful. So this push towards this overcorrection of consume as much fat as possible is definitely not where we should be going. High fat, high saturated fat increases cholesterol, causes vascular damage, increases inflammation, has effects on your brain health, worsens your metabolic health. I can go on and on and on. So while I'd never like to say you can't have one type of food, the focus on having mostly high saturated fat foods is definitely harmful. And the focus should be again on consuming more fruits and vegetables, which I'll go over again. Red meat causes cancer is one of the other things. So yes, processed meat absolutely is in the WHO group type 1 carcinogens. High red meat consumption does also carry increased risk. So lumping all meat together is sloppy science, but the answer is not unlimited intake of meat. Plant-based proteins have protein in them as well, but they also come with fiber and antioxidants and micronutrients, which have better metabolic health, support better metabolic health overall. So while yes, this was a blanket statement that red meat causes cancer, there are some things about that that are true, and again, all abundant consumption of meat is harmful, and I would argue that limiting your meat intake is actually what you should be aiming for, and producing some of that meat intake with beans, lentils, tofu, tempeh, things like that, which actually have fiber and vitamins and minerals and antioxidants that also support health. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Um, Eat breakfast every day narrative was shaped in part by the cereal industry marketing, but there is definite evidence that eating breakfast supports your metabolic health. When you have a nourishing breakfast and a filling breakfast, it supports better eating over the course of the day. It supports satiety, and it supports your metabolism, truthfully. And especially for women, I think the trend towards fasting um, during midlife can be very harmful, increasing cortisol, and again, not supporting that metabolism. So I think I do support time restricted eating more than fasting per se, intermittent fasting. I think that eating for you during your wake time is really important. Your brain is active. It's your highest metabolic consumer. So making sure that you have adequate calories so that you can do all the decision making and things that you do over the course of the day is really important. And so again, eating breakfast is going to support steady energy levels, but also support you more likely to continue that nourishing eating pattern throughout the day. Sunlight causes cancer. Vitamin D deficiency is real, but yes, UV radiation does cause skin cancer, and it's not a conspiracy. That is absolutely the truth. And there are sunscreens, mineral sunscreens, if there's a concern about chemical sunscreens being absorbed and with unclear uh, effects, right? We don't know exactly what those effects are. Granted, you don't want to be absorbing chemicals that are unnecessary in your skin, but there are mineral sunscreens which lie on the skin and act as a physical barrier. So, being outside in sun, I definitely recommend it. I think daylight is important. We respond to nature, so being outside is important, but also protecting your skin because skin cancer is a real risk for everybody. So, this is an important fact. War on cholesterol. So, cholesterol is more nuanced than LDL bad. Inflammation is an underappreciated driver of cardiovascular disease, but cholesterol still matters. Elevated cholesterol, particle size, oxidized LDL. These all have real implications for cardiovascular health. We're seeing more and more. In fact, they just lowered the guidelines and recommended more strict guidance on cholesterol. And so it is absolutely important. Cholesterol is damaging. So while, a certain amount of eggs are okay, uh, I wouldn't recommend them, and there are other sources of protein. That's what eggs are talked about, and the eggs have other, potential negative downsides. So, say that all to say is cholesterol is something that your body makes on its own, because that's one of the other things that I hear people say is that we need cholesterol. It's essential for cellular function. And so yes, cholesterol is essential, but your body makes the cholesterol that it needs, so you don't need dietary cholesterol for that. Your body again will make cholesterol from fat and from the other components that are available. So dismissing this cholesterol as a problem is problematic. And the other one is so fluoride. There's two more. There's fluoride. So fluoride, 1000% um, does help with caries, with dental caries, which when you talk about long-term health is a problem. So when children don't have fluoride early on in life, it leads to poor dental health, and dental hygiene is directly related to cardiovascular health and your brain health and risk with dementia and things like that. Water fluoridation is the amount is levels that are safe, and it's not the same as high dose exposure. So I think that the all or nothing, again, is harmful here. And salt. So the one thing that really is concerning is this idea that salt is not harmful. So salt from ultra processed foods is absolutely a problem. We see a lot hypertension is epidemic. It's most adults, unfortunately, are hypertensive and require antihypertensives. So salt is something that we should be aware of. Now, if you're getting there are foods that have salt in them naturally, the celery, for example, or other vegetables. But when you're talking about ultra processed foods, when you're talking about foods that are in packages, most packaged foods, if they are packaged, the preservatives, they have elevated sodium and more sodium than we should be consuming. So absolutely, we should be aware of the sodium that we're consuming and be more mindful of what we are consuming. So the food industry is misleading about a lot of things. I say all the time, when you look at the front of the package, it is an ad. It is not it's a claim, right? It's not really giving you true information. So I've done many videos about reading the ingredients list as opposed to reading the front of the package where they will claim that something is organic or all natural or high protein or whatever the thing, high fiber. They're doing high fiber now, but and that's just really to get you to buy. And so I'm not saying that the food industry isn't misleading, and they do absolutely spend lots of money engineering food to make it more hyper palatable so you have more and more of it. But, saying again, all or nothing is really, really damaging. We are complex human beings. We live in a complex world, every more complex every day. So the all or nothing thinking is very harmful. So again, looking at the whole picture is important. I want to talk about protein now. So this is really an important one. So this same overcorrection culture is also fueling this 2 grams of protein or 100 grams of protein a day or 90 grams of protein today, and this is pretty harmful. This 2 grams of protein per day is not based in science. The science actually says zero point 0.8 to 1.2, maybe 1.6 grams per kilo per day. And really, the range is for specific situations. There's several claims out there that more protein equals satiety. Satiety, your fullness comes from multiple different macronutrients and foods. I like to look at it as food as opposed to micronutrients. It's not just protein, but it is a combination of whole foods, right? So protein, fat, fiber, these all come together to produce satiety kills. Clues. And this is really important. So, whole plant rich meals, I say plant heavy all the time, are among the most satiating foods that we have out there. And they've actually been studied extensively. Protein builds muscle. This one gets me all the time. Protein does not go directly from your plate to your muscle. Muscle is built by activity. So, resistance training, making sure that you're getting adequate calories, much more important than solely consuming protein, right? So high quality calories, eating the rainbow fruits and veggies, whole grains, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, these all help recovery, which is important for muscle growth. They help decrease inflammation and help with blood flow and tissue repair. All of these things are more important than just focusing on solely on one macronutrient. I personally don't think that you need to track macros and grams. I know that a lot of people out there do. I think that macro math is exhausting personally, and I don't do it. I never recommend my patients do it. What I do recommend focusing on consuming all of those foods I mentioned, fruit and vegetables, whole grains, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, eating them in the right proportion so that you're satiated, and paying attention to your hunger cues and satiety cues. And when you do that and you eat to satiety and you pay attention to your body, you actually do much better. All foods, if you're consuming whole unprocessed foods, have all of the macros. Fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, they all have protein, fat, and carbohydrates, not just one or the other. And so looking at that combination of foods, I think is much more important, and making sure that you're consuming enough fruits and vegetables specifically is so much more important. 2 grams per kilo, that needs to go out the window. I will say this week I've seen two, if not more, posts of people with sequela related to this high protein intake. Number one, choosing a random number, 100 grams for everybody is wrong. Everybody, we do it by kilogram, not by pound. But when we measure things in medicine, we do it by kilogram. And the recommendation is 0.8 grams to 1.2 grams per kilo, 1.6 in some cases. And this really, when you look at the higher protein intakes, we're looking at elite athletes, bodybuilders, specific situations. Maybe somebody that has an injury. I worked in the intensive care unit. So in some cases, the people that have burn injuries or other severe traumas needed higher protein intake to help with healing. But this is not a standard. And I think that a lot of times we focus on protein above all other macros and all other micronutrients, and that is harmful. So when you have high protein intake, it is a significant load on your kidneys. And one of the cases I saw, somebody had elevated rising creatinine and wasn't couldn't have- didn't think that it was related to the protein intake, but it 1000% is. It is a significant load on the kidneys, and that as we get older, that is really something to think about, because I think the trend is now in midlife to push this protein, and we have to look at the whole picture and what it's causing. So again, I think that these things are really important. I think that reassessing, how we look at food and what makes sense is important. And I personally, again, I don't look at numbers. I don't like to count calories or macros. I think again, paying attention to your satiety cues, focusing on consuming mostly whole plant foods in a way that nourishes your body is the most important thing. And I think that looking at the joyful plate, I like to call it, so where you're having half of what you consume is non-starchy fruits and vegetables, a quarter is whole grains and starchy vegetables, another quarter is beans and legumes, and then some nuts and seeds, a good amount, a fair amount, and an abundance of flavor, herbs and spices. Flavor is medicine. And the reason that this works is because when you eat this variety of foods, again, they all have varying amounts of protein. They also have, fiber, which is important for your gut health, which helps support every system in your body. We're more microbes than we are human cells. And when we eat for our microbiome, we actually are eating for our health in general, for our mood, for our heart health, for our gut health, for our brain health. And that is really something that is not talked about enough, right? Is eating foods that are going to nourish our microbiome. They also helps promote satiety. They help balance blood sugar. They help, build muscle. Believe it or not, they're good for your brain health. And unfortunately, when we focus solely on protein as a goal, as the only macronutrients that's important, it pushes all these other things to the side, and then we end up with deficiencies, and we have to supplement. And we also affects our long-term health. As I mentioned, it can affect our metabolic health, increase our risk for diabetes and cancer and heart disease and dementia and all of those things. So I encourage you to take a more open look at what you consume and really looking at where you can add more plants as opposed to focusing solely on one macronutrient. I think herbs and spices, I mentioned that already. So food really is the key, as opposed to focusing on protein, where you may have to take a protein powder to reach a protein goal. It's important to think that, these foods are doing much more than just building muscle. They're doing so much more for your health overall. So this is Joyful Medicine. Joyful Medicine is, again, evidence-based lifestyle medicine that honors your culture, your life, and your lived experience. It's weight inclusive and joy first, and that is the practice. It's not a number on the scale. It's not a gram of protein. It's your whole, nourished, joyful life. So thank you for joining me on Friday Morning Live. I'm here every Friday morning at 9 a.m. To cover topics, evidence-based lifestyle medicine in a practical, sustainable way. And if you have any questions, I would love to hear them, or comments. If you are looking for support, I do one-on-one coaching. I also have a Joyful Medicine Collective community where we talk about these things in real life, and we share our wins. And I provide education. We do monthly coaching and challenges, and it's a fun place to be. It is all joy first, weight inclusive. So thank you for joining me today. And make sure you share this with anybody that you think may benefit, and subscribe for more.